This video and all of its contents, including any opinions expressed by the narrator, are strictly for entertainment purposes only and is not intended in any way as a substitute for professional services and consultation from a licensed therapist, doctor, attorney, or other licensed professional service provider. Each person must make their own life decisions, and those decisions are theirs. Welcome back to Find Your Alpha, your favorite channel on YouTube. Today we've got another terrific video for you, and the theme of today's story that I want to have you watch out for is this. You will only know information that she thinks you know, or are about to soon find out, and nothing more. Trickle truthing is the trademark of an untrustworthy partner. Now, let's get into today's story. And you can see the title coming right up on your screen. I had an affair with my now father-in-law right before I got married. The paternity of my first child is unknown. You talk about a dark secret, it doesn't get any darker than that. And you can see this story dates back to January 4th of 2017. She starts out and says, "This is my first posting here, and I don't want to give any specific information due to the sensitivity of the situation. I had a month-long affair with my now father-in-law just before I married my husband. The affair ended 2 days prior to our wedding day. Since that time, I have been a loyal wife and partner to my husband. I love and respect him more than anyone in this world. On the last day of our affair, my father-in-law and I realized the terrible sin we had committed. We both knelt, prayed, and begged the Almighty for forgiveness. We vowed to never have such contact again and swore to each other to keep this terrible violation to ourselves. Things have been fine over the years, and I had blocked out this dark time of my life like it never happened. The relationship I have with my father-in-law now is the normal father-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship, though I would say we're more distant. I have never been in a private setting with him since, nor have we had a private conversation. All gatherings with him have been in the presence of my husband. All of my in-laws live 4.5 hours from us, so we only see them 3 to 5 times per year. Here's the problem. Over Christmas, my married adult daughter was at a gathering with her sister-in-law. Her sister-in-law and brother-in-law had just completed one of these genealogy tests, where you submit DNA samples that trace your ancestors. They shared the results with my daughter and her husband. My daughter was fascinated by the results and thought it would be great to trace the origins of our family back to the early days on the East Coast prior to the journey west. She was so excited when she shared the news with her father and I that my husband decided to order kits for our entire family. We have a large family with more than 5 kids still at home. The issue at hand is that I am not certain if my husband or my father-in-law is the biological father of my daughter, but there's no question that my husband is her dad. My ask to all of you is, should I wait until we get the results back, and if my husband is the father, do nothing, and if he isn't, deal with the fallout at that time, or should I have a difficult discussion and tell him the truth before? It was 2 days ago when we discussed the genealogy testing, and I've not been able to sleep or eat much since. All the terrible thoughts about the affair, which I had buried away for 20 plus years, are now back to haunt me. I've always wanted to tell my husband, but knew if I did, he would divorce me and have our wedding canceled through the church. Now, I'm not sure what she's talking about there when she's saying having the wedding canceled through the church. If any of you out there know what she's talking about, please leave that in the comments. You see, I was not forthcoming with him about my past experiences. He eventually found out and forgave me, but for this I know he wouldn't. I know God wants me to be truthful and that I am committing an ongoing sin by not doing so. But I don't want to destroy my husband and end our marriage. What should I do? Signed, Desperate and Remorseful. So that was her original post, and now she has an update here from just a couple of days later on January 6th. She says, I want to clarify a few points from the questions I've been getting in your responses. I'm not going to get any more specific than this for the sake of my family's privacy. And now she has a list of clarifying points. She says, first of all, my husband is older than me by some years, and I married him a year out of high school. I worked for my father-in-law for a year prior to marrying my husband, who I met while working at his father's company. Next, she says, I told my husband he was my first when he wasn't. I had been with 2 men before him. He discovered this after we were married when one of my former boyfriends confessed to him out of shame. I then told him of the second man. So she hasn't been truthful to her husband since the beginning. After finding out he wasn't my first or second, my husband was going to divorce me, but I dedicated my life to him and proved I was a worthy wife, and he decided to remain. He didn't trust me and made me prove my dedication for 5 years before he gave me more children. We then proceeded to have multiple children over the next 11 years. I was 19 at the time of the affair, and my father-in-law was 50 plus. Are you kidding me? He was a closet alcoholic at the time. I was with my husband, then fiance, first before I had the affair with his father. We had been dating for 9 months. The affair began 27 days before our wedding day and ended 2 days prior. I was with my father-in-law 4 times during this period. So she can't say, hey, it was just a one and done mistake. Listen to this now. This is just sickening. She says, my estimated conception date was 2 days before our wedding, and I was with both my father-in-law and my now husband that day, and my husband the day before and day after. I don't know which man is the father, but I think it's my husband. Well, first of all, cheating on your fiance, in this case, soon to be husband, is awful, totally disrespectful, and as bad as you can get. But then to make matters worse, you cheat on him with his father, which is the lowest of the low. And then finally, I've got to say, and this is a message to all the women out there, women, do not have relations with multiple guys on the same day. That is totally unsanitary. If you're going to do that, and I don't think you should be having relationships with multiple guys, but for God's sakes, if you're going to do it, wait at least 2 weeks between guys. I mean, again, that is just gross and unsanitary. Come on. Next, she says, my father-in-law and I have never spoken about the affair since we ended it. We both agreed to block it out of our minds as if it never happened. And now for a few responses from the community. The first one's from a woman. She says, I'm going to tell you what you should do and what I actually would do if I were in your shoes. What you should do is tell your husband, and then the 2 of you should tell your daughter, then do a DNA test. Now, what I would do, I would not tell him and just wait for the results. You've got a 50-50 chance to keep your family unscathed. Do that. Good luck. Next, here's one from a guy. He says, tell your husband. How can you claim to be a woman of faith and a loyal wife, yet harbor such a thing? Your husband should have gotten an annulment right after he found out you lied about him being your first. Having an affair with your future father-in-law puts you and your future father-in-law in the category of human garbage. Absolutely it does. I mean, you can't get any more despicable than that, especially for the father. I mean, what kind of lowlife would do that to his son? If you can't trust your parents, who can you trust? And this guy says, I hope you've changed, but I doubt you have. And he ends it by saying, sick. And finally, we've got one more here from a woman. She says, I recommend you don't tell, as I too believe your husband will divorce you. If it turns out your husband is your daughter's father, then you've got nothing to worry about except the mental stress of harboring this dark secret, which you've been doing for years. I think in this case, keeping the secret is justified, as the mental damage of this news would devastate your family. And now I want to remind you, if you're liking what you hear in this story, hit that like button. That'll move this video way up on the YouTube algorithm and get it seen by people all over the planet. Now let's get back to today's story. And here's her first update from January 23rd, 2017. She says, "Thank all of you for responding. I've decided not to tell my husband about the affair and just let things play out with the genealogy testing. My daughter and husband just ordered the test last night. I hoped they had forgotten about the whole thing, but they started talking about it again and he placed the order. From what I understand, the results take over a month to get back, so I've got some time to think about how I will handle the situation should it turn out my husband is not her father. In the meantime, I'm going to continue raising my kids and babysitting my grandchild. I'm also going to make sure I get some much needed rest, as I've slept very little since this whole thing began. The next month is going to be very difficult, but I'll get through it. I'm going to try to live life as normal and give this over to the Almighty to do as He sees appropriate, as there's nothing I can do at this point. I'll come back here and let everyone know how it goes when the results come back. Signed, Desperate and Remorseful." And now her next update was a couple of months later on April 5th of 2017. She says, "Has anyone experienced delays in getting genealogy results back once the DNA samples have been submitted? We got our kits back in early February and mailed them in on February 13th, but haven't gotten the results. As you know from my story, I'm on pins and needles waiting, and I'm concerned there may be a problem. My husband has checked with the company and they just replied that the results and report are in progress. My daughter said her sister-in-law got their results back in under a month. Meanwhile, for us, it's been over 6 weeks. Could this be because there's no match with my husband and my daughter? I'm a nervous wreck. Signed, Desperate and Remorseful." So she's thinking the reason for the delay is because there's no match between her daughter and her husband, and there has to be something more that they have to do in that case. But we'll find out as we go through this story. And now for the final update, the big reveal, where we're going to find out whether her husband is her daughter's father. And this is from June 3rd, so a couple of months later. She says, "I've come back to share an update on the results of our genealogy test. My husband is the biological father of my daughter. As I stated in my last update, I was a nervous wreck ever since my daughter mentioned having our family genealogy tested. Since then, I had not been able to sleep much and had eaten very little. I also started going out on long daily walks with my grandchild in the stroller, sometimes twice a day. Though this time was difficult, I actually lost 19 pounds and have continued the walking routine and eating better since we got the results. And now I've lost a total of 26 pounds. I feel really good, and my husband loves my new figure. I'm also back to sleeping soundly again." Now back to the day we got the results. We all had eaten dinner and were finishing cleaning up after, when my husband went to the bedroom to use the computer. He came out and said the results were back and that he was going to call my daughter to come over and we'd all look at them together as a family. Hearing this, my heart started beating so fast I nearly fainted. I actually had to excuse myself and retreated to our master bathroom, where I sat and tried to regain my composure. I almost had to call my husband as I couldn't breathe and thought I was having a heart attack. After getting out of the bathroom, I laid down for 10 minutes until I heard my daughter in the living room. I then went out to greet her and rejoin my family. It was now time to reveal the results. So my husband instructed my kids to bring kitchen chairs in for everyone into our bedroom, and he would be pulling up the results and using a projector he has to display them on the wall. We've done this before for family movie nights, so this is a normal setting for us. However, this time I was on the verge of collapsing. The first file my husband opened was my daughter's, and it showed that I was her mother and her father was indeed her father. With this, I actually had an out-of-body experience. It truly felt like I had been touched by the Almighty, as a sense of calm spilled over me and my heartbeat returned to normal. I was finally at peace. With that, I secretly looked up and gave thanks. After getting this news, I thoroughly enjoyed reading the results and discussing our lineage with our children. We all had so much fun. It was a day I will truly remember for the rest of my life. This was the day I was delivered from the personal purgatory I created for myself through my careless, selfish, and sinful ways some 21 years ago. Now, I want to answer a couple of questions I've gotten. Why did I do it? The honest answer is that I was unsure about my husband back then. Realize I was just 18 when we started dating, and he asked me to marry him after 5 months. Of course, everybody out there knows that's a big no-no. Yes, I could have said no. Let's wait, but I was concerned he'd move on and find another woman, as he was a man with a prosperous future. In our culture, it is a tradition for women to marry young to men who are 4 or more years older, as it is considered a necessary foundation for creating a strong family unit. As our wedding grew closer, I became more unsure, and one day, when my father-in-law and I were alone in his office, it all just happened. I didn't love my father-in-law romantically then, not at all. Looking back, I believe it was just his aura of being a strong and confident businessman. How could a man like that be interested in someone like me, a young woman with self-esteem problems and no future promise? My husband at the time was not established, and he wasn't strong and confident. He was just a young, impulsive guy just starting out. Now, see here, guys, how women migrate and really latch on to guys, men that they see as strong, confident, and in this case, a man with money versus someone who is the opposite of that. Now, that is just totally disgusting what she did, and it's just totally disgusting what this guy's father did to him. Unbelievable, and the lowest of lows. But this really tells you a little bit about a woman's psyche, how they are always looking for the highest and best. This is hypergamy in the extreme. This all changed after we were married, as I quickly fell deep in love with my husband in every way and remain that way to this day. I can honestly say I have never had even a thought of another man since my husband and I married and started building a family. Actually, with all the kids we have, I wouldn't have time for it anyway, even if I wanted to, which I don't. I'm terrified of losing him, as he is the strong, powerful, and confident businessman his father was 21 years ago. I also know he could have his choice of a dozen or more young women in our community. That is why I was so worried about getting these results. I made up movies in my head of him divorcing me and marrying and having kids with some young, beautiful woman. Now for the big question. Will I ever tell my husband about the affair? No, I never will as long as we are alive. My plan is to tell him and apologize in the afterlife, if the Almighty gives me the opportunity to do so. If I confess now, all it will do is destroy him mentally, destroy his relationship with his father, and end our marriage. I know this is a terrible secret to harbor, and many of you are going to be angry with me, but I'm now at peace with this decision and pray for forgiveness multiple times a day. Thank you for staying with me on this difficult journey. I wish you all a blessed and happy life. Signed, no longer desperate, but still remorseful. So that's the end of her story. Now for a few comments from me. First of all, I'm going to go back and address this guy's father. You are the lowest. You are scum. You are human garbage. How could you do something like that to your own son? That is just totally disgusting and something you cannot recover from. I don't care how many times you would apologize. I would never forgive you. And if I ever found out about this, I would totally cut you out of my life. The same thing I have to say applies to this guy's wife. I don't care if she was 18, 19 years old. You just don't do that. So if I found out about this and I was her husband, I would immediately divorce her. I, of course, would love and take care of my kids and have great relationships with them and preferably have them live with me, but I would totally cut her off. I would be civil to her, but I would have really nothing beyond just a business type relationship with her. For my father, I would totally cut him out of my life. I mean, that guy is just a total dog. You can't get any lower than him. So those are my thoughts out there, people. Now I want to hear from you. What did you think of this story? Have you ever heard anything like this? Tell us about it in the comments. I love hearing from you. It's one of my favorite parts of putting out these stories is seeing all the comments coming back in. Also, be sure to hit that like button, share this video with your friends, and please subscribe to this great channel, and I will talk to you on the next one.